In the dynamic world of online gaming, where innovation and creativity reign supreme, we have with us Soham Thacker, the driving force and founder of Gamerji, a rising star in the online gaming industry. Welcome to the show, Soham.
Thank you so much, Sonu, for having me here. Really excited to have a chat with you.
Great, Soham. We welcome you on the show, and we'll be talking about the online gaming industry. What is the future of the online gaming industry in India, and what has been your startup journey, and why did you chose to venture into the online gaming foray? So, Soham, let me just begin with this question. There has been a lot of talk about the GST, 28% GST that has been introduced for online gaming platforms, esports. So, what are your thoughts about that?
So, see, ideally speaking, I'll take the GST question first, and then obviously we can deep dive down into why and how Gamerji. The GST thing, see, ideally speaking, it is something which definitely creates a detrimental effect on the especially on the real money gaming side of the online gaming industry. As far as the gaming industry per se, which has been existent forever, is concerned, ideally talking about video games in general, the impact is not as detrimental because obviously it does not depend on real money cash in cash outs, and fortunately, so even Gamerji as a platform is not an RMG platform. So there definitely is a pinch, but the effect is not as detrimental as probably it is in the real money gaming space.
Okay. And do you see any negative effects or after effects due to this GST imposition? Uh, has this GST imposition changed the current market narrative for esports and online gaming startups?
Well, definitely has changed the narrative for online gaming. When again, like I said, real money gaming. The definition, so to say, of esports is very elaborative. Right? When you talk about esports, the term esports globally is always known as competitive video game. Right? I mean, fantasy or rummy or poker don't fall into the realm of esports. Right? So when we talk about the impact of 28% GST, ideally on esports it is very negligible because the 28% GST has not been levied upon in-app purchases on games. For example, if you are unlocking a new level or a new avatar within a game, the GST impact is not there, or ideally speaking, not detrimental. But when you talk about the larger scale impact on either the casino games or even the fantasy sports platforms, then obviously it has created a huge ambush. Especially because not only about the 28% GST, but also the GST being implied on the actual deposit amount rather than the platform fee segment of the deposits. So obviously it has created a huge havoc. We have seen a lot of organizations obviously approach the government because it is something which does not help the business sustain, especially on the RMG side. And then also such extravagant taxation norms also drive away a lot of foreign investments that are getting made in the online gaming sector in our country, right? So a lot of venture capitals or a lot of funds which were looking at India as a high potential growing online gaming market have obviously taken a backseat. So it's definitely something where the broader scheme of things, according to my opinion, have not been taken into consideration. It's obviously very directly targeted towards the industry one, and obviously not segmentizing the different segments within the online gaming is something which definitely the government should rethink about.
Soham, you also mentioned that there is a difference between online gaming and esports, like certain fantasy apps.
Correct.
So, just so that our audience and viewers have a proper clarity, could you just differentiate these two, three terms?
No, absolutely. So, like exactly what I said in my statement, right? Esports is a competitive video gaming. Wherever you look at esports globally, whether you look at in the West or in Southeast Asia or Middle East or Europe, so wherever you go, esports is always defined as competitive video gaming, or ideally where players, teams, they come together, they compete in games like FIFA, games like Call of Duty, PUBG, etc. That is the term esports which the world knows. In
Mhm.
India, it has always been jumbled with the fact that even fantasy cricket is esports, even poker platforms are esports, even rummy platforms are esports. They are not esports. They have their own segments, right? They like fantasy cricket is considered fantasy gaming, right? Like poker or rummy are considered card-based gaming or ideally even casino games in certain regions. So that's where the differentiation is very high. When a
Mhm.
global standpoint. Unfortunately, the awareness factor in India is not that deeply penetrated for it to be differentiated yet. And obviously, it's the awareness is taking its own time, but a lack of authoritative body that governs these channels is something which is even creating this confusion even deeper down. So that is something that we have to live with in the space.
Okay. Soham, you mentioned that there is a difference between the online gaming sector and the fantasy apps. So, as you mentioned that you're a platform which is into esports. So, what is the
Correct.
situation of esports startups in India right now? Because I'm sure people esports has flourished in past 2 years. It has become a sort of a thing which people are taking now very seriously. They are building careers, professional careers out of this. So where do you think the esports market is going in India? Because according to my research, the esports market in foreign countries is much greater than the Indian market.
No, absolutely, and also esports was introduced in these foreign regions at least 10 years before it was introduced in India, right? And that's majorly the
Mhm.
difference. And obviously, India as a country, comes with 300 million plus gamers. So obviously, the potential is huge. Also, when you look at the data viability in the recent years, which enables the audience to play these AAA titles competitively, has also increased. I mean,
Mhm.
gone are the days where we literally had to only depend on cyber cafes to allow us to literally have multiplayer games, right? So obviously, with that, the entire infrastructure that is built around it, the industry is obviously reaping its fruits of it. And we see a lot of the younger generation, ideally the late millennials or the Gen Zs, taking up gaming or esports as their professional choice of career, and that is
Mhm.
something which was not heard of in a country like India a few years back. And then obviously the infrastructure also supporting it. We literally have teams now which are competing at a global scale for a lot of different titles, and a lot of organizations which are supporting these teams or incubating them even is something which boosts not only the ecosystem but also the enterprising future gamers.
Okay. Soham, you just mentioned that there are foreign investments into this online gaming sector, which are very prevalent, and it is a major source of funding for the startups that are getting their foot in this industry. So, like you mentioned this, and could you just tell our audience, is there a specific skill set that is required to get these fundings, or how do they step into this online gaming thing?
See, honestly speaking, just giving my personal background, I mean, yeah, it'll be cliche to say that I've been a gamer, but also another factor that drove me towards this was the potential and the size, that literally the size of the market. And
Okay.
obviously, learn your way as you grow. It's not like I knew exactly how esports worked from day one, right? All I knew was there was a gap where people could play competitively and virtually. The offline esports can only cater to the top 1% or less than 1% of the pro level gamers. But ideally, we have millions and millions of people who still play these games in the comforts of their bedrooms or college campuses or cafes. There was no platform where ideally they could come and compete against each other. And that is
Okay.
exactly what was the gap that Gamerji was set out to fill in the initial days as well. And with that being said, the only skill set that is required, so to say, is to build good technology that gives a better user experience, that kind of connects better with your user base, and then obviously filling the gaps where the ideal solution is required is something that are the major three criteria to start any business, not only gaming. And when it comes to gaming, understanding the mindset of your customer is going to be very important. especially when you talk about online gaming. Understanding what the requirements are, understanding where there are gaps, and then obviously providing technological solution is something which can resolve those gaps. So yeah, I mean there is yeah, you require basic gaming knowledge, but you don't require like decades and decades of gaming industry experience to have an online gaming startup.
Okay. Soham, you mentioned that the market that was there to be penetrated is something which attracted you in the online gaming sector in India. So, talking about your startup and your startup journey, how did you build your startup? Like you mentioned that the market that was there to be penetrated was something that fascinated you to start a startup in this online gaming sector. What were the other factors that uh, contributed towards you starting a startup in online gaming, and what were the difficulties that you faced when you were building this Gamerji?
So there were a couple of things the reasons why I started this. One was, like I said, I myself as an average gamer spent hours and hours gaming, and obviously did not gain any benefits out of it, or ideally did not even have the right platform to kind of showcase my skills. So that was something that I wanted to change. And second, being a computer engineer myself, it was easier to build the first version without having any external resources. Right, the first version, literally me and my CTO today, we started coding it together, and the first version was easier to launch without having any, so to say, money in the pocket at that time. So that were primary two factors why online gaming turned out to be a good choice. And obviously, along with that, my previous experiences of a couple of other startups that I had in the past as well kind of helped me understand how to functions the other aspects of running a startup besides just technology, which were ideally team building, managing your finances, raising funds, etc. So that was something that obviously played its own part as well. And then from a challenge standpoint, lot of challenges. Obviously, initially building a good team. Unfortunately or fortunately, we launched the platform towards end of 2019. So raising money, especially in the middle of COVID, was something which was a challenge. And then obviously to top that, we had most premium titles getting banned in our country, the likes of PUBG and Free Fire getting banned in 2020, 21. So these are the challenges which sometimes are not in your hands, but you have to learn how to overcome them and keep sustaining. And then fortunately now everything played its own course, and then things are going well.
Okay, you mentioned just that there were certain platforms that were banned. Now, some of these platforms have been planning to come back into India. BGMI has just made a comeback, and Garena Free Fire has been trying to make a comeback, but it has been delayed. So, what are your thoughts about these platforms?
No, absolutely. These are the most popular platforms in our region. There are no two ways about it. It will definitely boost the entire esports ecosystem, which was literally kept on a pause for
Mhm.
these couple of years, especially PUBG. The first ban that it took, being one of the most popular games, I think it was having more than 70% market share in esports alone. And suddenly one fine day you wake up and the game is not there. And when you talk about the gaming industry or ideally esports, it's not only the people who play, it's also the people who broadcast, people who make content out of it, people who organize tournaments, platforms like ourselves. So obviously, these games coming back will be a huge boost to the ecosystem. Also, a lot of these events, or so to say, tournaments, which were cancelled or put on hold because of these volatility of these games, will again have a fresh start. And then obviously the gamers who have been engaged in playing the battle royale or ideally the PUBG, Free Fire kind of games will obviously get again a chance to showcase their skills and obviously make a mark and hopefully represent our country going forward.
True. Soham, you also mentioned that during your startup journey, you through your previous startup ventures, you kind of figured out how to manage finances, how to build a good team. So, what are your learnings across the various startups that you ventured, and if you have to share some key learnings that you would like to share and impart upon the startup aspiring startup founders, what would they be?
See, I mean, it's very difficult to narrate it in a couple of lines. Obviously, the learnings keep going on. But the few key learnings that I had. One was you cannot run forget about a startup, any company without a good team. So valuing everyone who joins you in this mission is something that is very important. Having that skill set to not only find but to retain the right resources is also very important. And most importantly, understanding your customer. I mean, I've had mistakes in the past where you know you go literally with the mentality of you're so fixated on your vision and your idea that what you start to believe is there is actually a demand for it, and where sometimes there isn't, right? So understanding your customer needs, customer patterns is something which is very, very important. And then obviously, last but not the least, is the right is I wouldn't call it a method, but definitely building a right set of network which also assists you in raising the right set of funds from the right set of resources, and also making sure that you don't enter into any bad deals is something which obviously experience and learnings can teach you.
Okay. Soham, you ended with funding, like getting the right funding and not getting into bad deals. Uh, like there is under this current government, there has been a very great boost given a startups have been given a great boost, and there are various fundings available for startups. So, what is the funding scenario for online gaming or esports startups from the government? Is there any support for such startups?
Well, not directly. I mean, the generic startup schemes are there,
Mm,
which you can take advantages of. But like I said, unfortunately, there is not a exact governing body, or I tend to believe that the government is still trying to figure out what are the good narratives and the future of this industry.
mm,
Obviously, you don't have gamers sitting in the parliament, right? Unfortunately, but
mm.
that is where it's still there are no gaming focused, so to say, initiatives. But again, you can always avail the larger initiatives that the government has towards startups.
Okay. Thanks, Soham. Thanks a lot for joining us and spilling the beans and shedding
Was
light
that?
on the. Hello.
Yes, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, Sonu, for having me here, and it had a lovely time chatting with you.
Thanks, Soham. Thanks for coming on TICE TV and sharing your knowledge with our audience. And I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.